Have you ever looked into the darkness and wondered what might be lurking there, waiting for the perfect moment to reveal itself? Welcome to Shadows and Whispers, your weekly refuge for stories that will mess with your mind and pull you into the unknown. Prepare yourself for a journey of horror and science fiction, where each story is a new door to the beyond. Here, the shadows whisper secrets that may make you question your reality. Each week, you'll be surprised by unique narratives that will make your heart race and your imagination soar. But don't forget to not miss any of these spine-chilling stories. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. By doing so, you'll always be the first to know when a new terrifying story drops. When you subscribe, you not only step into the shadows, but also gain access to exclusive content, story tips, and interactions with other fans of the supernatural. Don't let the shadows slip away from you. Join us on this thrilling journey. The shadows are waiting for you. The cycle of memory and time. Memory is a cruel thing. It forces us to relive moments we wish we could forget while making us incapable of remembering the ones that matter most. For Dr. Ethan Carter, memory was a curse, trapping him in the most painful moment of his life. It was an ordinary day when it happened. Clara, his wife, and Emily, his 7-year-old daughter, were on their way to school when a truck lost control. Ethan always wondered what he could have done differently. But now there was nothing he could do. The pain consumed him for years, transforming him from a celebrated physicist into a hollow shell of a man, until an idea emerged. Ethan decided that if science couldn't save his family, he would bend it until it could. The Rift engine was the most ambitious project at the Kronos Research Facility. With funding from the government and the world's largest private conglomerates, it promised to redefine humanity's understanding of the universe. The concept was revolutionary: to create a controlled tear in space-time, allowing glimpses into the past and potentially controlled time travel. On paper, it was perfect. In practice, no one knew what might happen. Ethan was the project leader, but his motivation went far beyond scientific advancement. The Rift engine was his only chance to fix the mistake that haunted him. His obsession had made him distant, but it didn't stop him from attracting allies. Samantha Sam Lee, young and brilliant, Sam was the project's lead programmer. Her keen intellect was matched only by her empathy. She saw Ethan as a mentor, but also as a broken man. Dr. Victor Armitage, the pragmatic chief engineer, who believed the Rift engine was the key to fame and fortune. Victor respected Ethan, but lacked his ethical reservations. Dr. Marissa Clark, a biophysicist tasked with studying the potential biological implications of time travel. Marissa was skeptical and frequently questioned the project's ethics. Together they formed a brilliant but conflicted team, and these conflicts would turn deadly once the Rift engine was activated. The day of the first test arrived. The tension in the air was palpable, and for good reason. No one knew what to expect. The government demanded results, but simulations showed inconsistencies. Ethan, however, was confident. He had to be. "We're about to make history," Victor said, adjusting the controls. "Or destroy the planet," Marissa retorted. The lab filled with the hum of the engine powering up. A sphere of light began to pulse at the center of the room, growing until it formed an opening. The team held their breath. On the other side of the rift, they saw a scene, a park with children playing. It was the past, but it looked as real as the present. "We did it!" Victor exclaimed. But something was wrong. The rift started to expand beyond the predicted parameters, pulsating erratically. Ethan tried to shut down the engine, but the controls wouldn't respond. Suddenly, a guttural sound filled the lab, as if something was coming through the rift. The lights flickered, and the rift finally collapsed. The silence that followed was almost as deafening as the noise. "This wasn't in the calculations," Sam said, her voice trembling. In the days that followed, strange things began to happen. Clocks displayed impossible times. Objects moved on their own. People felt like they were being watched, even when they were alone. Ethan buried himself in the experiment data, searching for answers. He didn't tell anyone, but he had started hearing voices, whispers coming from the lab at night. Sam, concerned, confronted him. "Do you think we did something wrong?" We didn't do anything wrong. We're dealing with forces we don't fully understand, but we'll figure it out. Meanwhile, Victor became obsessed with the idea of using the Rift engine for commercial purposes. He saw limitless potential, even as the anomalies grew increasingly severe. One night, Marissa disappeared. She had gone to the lab alone and never returned. When the team reviewed the security footage, they saw something unsettling: shadows moving across the lab. They had no clear light source, and most disturbingly, they seemed alive. Sam began investigating the anomalies and made a chilling discovery. The shadows were distorted versions of themselves, coming from alternate realities where the experiment had gone catastrophically wrong. "Ethan," she said, her voice shaking, "this isn't just an accident, it's a cycle, we're trapped in it." Ethan didn't want to believe her, but as he analyzed the Rift data, he found patterns he couldn't ignore. As the lab descended into chaos, Victor made a drastic decision. He reactivated the Rift engine in hopes of opening a new rift to stabilize the anomalies. But the plan backfired. Instead, the Rift began consuming the lab, and the shadows took physical form. Ethan knew there was only one way to stop it. He had to enter the Rift and close the cycle. "You can't do this," Sam pleaded. "I've already lost everything. Let me at least fix this." Ethan stepped through the Rift, but what he found on the other side was terrifying. He saw infinite versions of himself, each making the same mistake in different realities. Ethan realized the shocking truth. He had always been responsible for the accident that killed his family. Every time he tried to fix the past, his actions caused the disaster. He was the villain of his own story. As the Rift began to collapse, a distorted version of Ethan appeared. "You never understood," the entity said. "The cycle can't be broken. You are the cycle." Ethan was consumed by the Rift, his consciousness splintering into infinite versions of himself, all doomed to repeat the same mistake. Back in the lab, Sam managed to destroy the Rift engine, but she knew it wasn't over. Days later, she heard a strange sound coming from the lab, a sound that resembled Ethan's voice calling her name. She stopped at the door, hesitating. Deep down, she knew the cycle had begun again. The haunting echoes of Clara Miller. Have you heard about Clara Miller? No? Let me tell you this story because it's the kind that makes you look over your shoulder every time you hear a noise at night. And who knows, you might just stop sleeping alone. This story floats around like one of those urban legends no one really knows if it's true. The scariest part? It starts so normally that it could happen to anyone. Clara was an ordinary woman living in an old house, one of those that has more stories than walls. The real terror began on a rainy autumn night, around 2:07 a.m. when a sound started echoing through her home. It was a whisper, almost a melody, that seemed to call her name. "Clara, Clara." At first, she tried to ignore it like anyone would, but one night, curiosity overcame fear. And well, that's what's going to give you chills. Everyone who heard this story says that if she had just let the sound be, maybe everything would have turned out differently. That fateful night, with the whisper growing more insistent, Clara decided to go down to the basement. Now, you need to understand one thing. The basement had always been a place she avoided. The musty smell, the dense darkness, it held secrets that should remain buried. But the sound was guiding her like a magnet. When she opened the basement door, a shiver ran down her spine. With a lantern trembling in her hands, she slowly descended the creaking stairs, every step protesting her audacity. The sound increased, and at the back of the room she saw something that made her stop, a dusty diary. With trembling fingers, Clara picked up the diary. The pages were filled with the words of a woman who had lived there before, Beatrice. The words spoke of love, loss, and gradually a growing obsession, until finally they became frantic pleas. "If you hear this voice, run away!" The sentence was underlined, almost torn. Clara felt the pressure mounting, and terror took hold of her. The diary revealed the truth. Beatrice, consumed by her pain and the call, had made a fatal mistake. A ritual, something unthinkable. And of course, Clara had already realized the sound was always there, but she didn't know she was about to get lost as well. In a moment of despair, she decided she needed to know more, and following the instructions in the diary, she attempted to perform the ritual that could give her the answers she sought. The following night, at the same hour, Clara followed through with the plan. The air was heavy, and the essence of the house seemed to pulse around her. As she recited the words of the ritual, the voice became even clearer, almost screaming her name. "Clara, don't do this!" echoed throughout the room, but it wasn't a familiar voice. It was a warning, a version of herself who had tried to change the course of events. The connection was so intense that suddenly Clara found herself in a parallel reality, face to face with Beatrice. "I can't stop what you're about to do!" Beatrice screamed, desperation etched on her face. Clara, unsure how to respond, found herself trapped in dilemmas she never could have imagined. In that instant, a decision needed to be made. Beatrice looked at her, her desperate eyes pleading with her not to repeat the same mistake. But the pressure around Clara was unbearable. In a moment of fleeting courage, she decided to reject it all. She wanted to break free from that curse. But in one last desperate move, Clara shouted, "I won't follow your footsteps." And with that, she threw the diary to the ground. In a deafening tremor, everything shattered. When she awoke, she was back in her room. The sound had stopped, but the sense of loss consumed her. What Clara didn't know was that by breaking the connection, she had tragically sealed her fate. Months later, the house was for sale once again. The sound that only Clara heard now enveloped the void left by her absence. The diary remained in the basement, untouched, lost in the dust of time. Thus, Clara's story became an urban legend, a warning for the foolhardy who dared to explore the unknown. For when the sound begins, it may be that the only thing you cannot escape is yourself. Now, if someone tells you not to go down to a basement, believe them. The walls have ears, and the voice echoing may be your own, pleading for you not to do something you will never understand. Journey through the cosmos and self-discovery. In a not-so-distant future, space exploration had transformed from a distant dream into a routine chapter of everyday life. People reveled in visions of the infinite, captivated by stars and distant moons. Humanity had conquered not only the vastness of space, but also the boundaries of imagination. Sleek ships, designed as works of art, sailed through the cosmos, and a shared anticipation buzzed in the air, signaling that something magnificent lay on the horizon. An international consortium of astronauts was about to embark on the boldest mission in the history of space exploration, to traverse a wormhole. The crew members, each of them carrying hopes, fears, and a past they could not shake, were about to plunge into a reality that would test their very existence. Captain Liz Harper was a tough woman with short hair and a piercing gaze. A former military officer, her mind operated with the precision of a well-oiled machine, driven by strategy and an unwavering sense of responsibility. Despite her tenacity, her past lingered like an unwelcome shadow, guiding her decisions and fueling her determination. Having left the military after a tragic error that cost her team their lives during a rescue mission, she dedicated her life to proving she could protect those under her command. Dr. Luke Benson, the team's quantum physicist, embodied geeky brilliance. With his thick-framed glasses and disheveled hair, he had always preferred the worlds of science to the harsh realities of social interactions. Luke's passion for the unknown was palpable, but his insecurities often overshadowed his brilliance. Complicating matters was his long-held affection for Liz, a feeling that never quite crossed the line from friendship. His admiration for her strength gnawed at him like an unhealed wound. Sarah Kim, the ship's mechanical engineer, was the heartbeat of the crew. With a smile as bright as the stars and a penchant for humor, she had the ability to alleviate tension with a well-timed joke. Yet, hidden beneath that radiant exterior was a deep sorrow. She had lost her mother in a spaceship accident years prior. Then there was Jonathan "John" Cruel, the adventurous pilot. Embodying a laid-back demeanor mixed with adrenaline-seeking thrill, he thrived on risky maneuvers. However, beneath his confident facade lay a dark past, a record of mistakes that led to the loss of close friends on previous missions. With everyone aboard the impressive ship Odyssey, preparations for their mission were in full swing. The command center thrummed with anticipation, lights blinking and stations coming to life as the countdown began. As the ship's commander, Liz looked at her crew, feeling a mix of affection and responsibility. "We're about to make history," she declared, her determination more for her own sanity than for the team's comfort. The wormhole was just days away, each second dragging as though the universe were laughing at their impatience. When they finally approached the shimmering gateway, The atmosphere inside the ship thickened with a combination of excitement and dread. They weren't just venturing through a spatial anomaly. They were ready to leap into alternative dimensions, into the unknown. As energy surged through the ship, the moment of departure arrived. Space warped around them as they crossed into the wormhole. Brilliant tongues of light illuminated the interior, and a surreal sense of disorientation enveloped their senses. Stars morphed into shadows, then vanished altogether. In one fleeting instant, the crew stood at the brink of eternity. In the next, everything slipped into silence. When the crew emerged on the other side, they found themselves in an otherworldly realm. The sky glimmered with a blend of unimaginable colors while stars danced like live creatures. Yet, despite the breathtaking beauty, a sense of dread settled over them, an unsettling feeling that something was profoundly amiss. Establishing communication, Luke said, turning his attention to the ship's systems. But something was wrong. The signals were distorted, slipping through their fingers like grains of sand. Anxiety rippled through the command center. "Maybe we should conduct a reconnaissance of the area," Sarah suggested, her tone light but her eyes reflecting the underlying tension. "Let's see what this mysterious place holds," John added, trying to infuse some humor into the heavy atmosphere. As they moved cautiously through the unfamiliar landscape, the ambiance shifted. Sounds echoed in the distance, soft murmurs that seemed to beckon them. Initially, they dismissed it as the whims of this alien world, but soon those whispers turned into vivid manifestations, shadowy figures that took shape before their eyes. One by one, each crew member was drawn into haunting visions, fragments of their pasts resurfacing to ensnare them. Liz encountered the moment she had lost everything, the chaotic cacophony of her team's cries still echoing in her ears. Guilt tightened around her throat like a noose, the weight of her perceived failure pressing down mercilessly. "You are responsible," a voice coiled in her mind. Luke faced a barrage of memories from his school days when he had been the target of relentless bullying. The isolation washed over him anew, leaving him feeling utterly alone in a vast universe. "You'll never be loved," a whisper lingered in the corners of his consciousness, tightening his chest. Sarah stumbled upon the memory of her mother, reliving the last moments before the fatal accident. "Mom!" she cried out in anguish, grief rushing back in a flood, threatening to drown her. Each painful recollection unfurled like a film, more agonizing than the last. "You can't leave me!" She clung desperately to the specter of her past. Meanwhile, John found himself in a waking nightmare, the faces of his deceased comrades materializing around him, their accusing eyes piercing through the fog of his guilt. "You could have saved us," their voices wailed, blending into a discordant symphony of remorse. As they wrestled with their dark reflections, the ship began to tremble, sensing the rising tension among them. The environment itself seemed to twist and churn, becoming a reflection of their inner turmoil. The emotional strain reached a breaking point. In an emergency meeting within the ship, Liz fought to maintain control. "We need to come together. What we're experiencing isn't real. It's a manifestation of our fears," she insisted, though the tremor in her voice left her intent sounding hollow. "I remember each moment, every weakness I tried to hide," Luke admitted, tears streaming down his face. "We're not weak. We're facing what continues to haunt us," Sarah countered, desperation lacing her words. "Together we failed before, and now we must confront everything in our path," John shouted, frustration boiling over as he leaned against the cold wall of the ship. Yet despite their escalating emotions, they remained unaware of the ship itself beginning to fray at the seams. The wormhole's dark magic held them in its grip, and the thin line separating reality from illusion was dissolving. In a moment of clarity, Liz resolved to confront not only the wormhole but also the fears that had ensnared them. "These visions don't define us. We have to accept who we are before we're consumed. If we allow these specters to take over, we will perish, both in space and in our identities." Together they decided to confront their memories and give form to their pain. Each person focused on their experiences, forging a powerful bond through understanding. "Let's do this together. If we're facing our demons, let's do it as one," Rafa said, determination shining in his eyes. "How many times have we stumbled? How many more do we need to endure before we rise?" Liz asked, her soul igniting their resolve. As they united their wills, a surge of strength flowed through the ship. The visions that had tormented them began to fade, but the pressure still bore down. "We're almost there. Let's return to reality," Sarah shouted, their collective energy pushing them forward. As the fusion of their strengths reached a crescendo, the space around them began to stabilize. They weren't merely on a ship. They stood in a circle of light, where memories flickered like fragile flames. Then the truth finally pierced through the haze. They weren't simply journeying through space, they were embarking on an exploration deep within themselves. Their fears had become prisoners of unmade choices, a cosmic reflection of their inner struggles. The haunting visions were not illusions but portraits of their lives, persistently tying them to their uncertainties. Every decision, every mistake, became part of the tapestry of who they were. The events they had been living were not just a passage through dimensions, but rather a quest for self-acceptance. They realized that the true escape had always been within them, waiting for their acknowledgement. With newfound clarity, the crew recognized that their only path forward lay in acceptance, embracing their mistakes as stepping stones rather than shackles. "If we are not our own prisoners, the past cannot define us," Liz exclaimed, and like a shared mantra, the crew echoed, "We are not what we have seen, we are not what we have lost, we are who we choose to be now." The ship shuddered as a blinding light enveloped them, a wave of energy propelling them forward into a new realm of possibility. The walls of their old reality began to dissolve, revealing an exit stretching toward the horizon. When they finally emerged from the wormhole, the Odyssey found itself transformed in its own dimension, the cosmos surrounding them radiant and alive. The stars glittered like jewels within their reach, promising new beginnings. They were not simply back, they were reborn, infused with purpose and determination. Liz smiled, her heart soaring. "We didn't just survive, we learned to navigate through our weaknesses." Luke finally grasped Liz's hand, warmth radiating between them. "We've delved deeper within ourselves than we ever thought possible. The true journey lies within us." Turning to John, Sarah asked, "And now, what do we make of these new opportunities?" John grinned, confidently adjusting the controls. "Trust me, the future is ours to explore." And as the Odyssey sailed into the celestial expanse, the stars were no longer mere points in the sky. They were new choices waiting to be made, fresh stories yearning to be unfolded. The real exploration, they learned, wasn't just about the cosmos, but about the uncharted territory within themselves. And there you are, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for sticking around for another story here on Shadows and Whispers. Your presence is what makes this channel special. If you enjoyed what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. It helps us grow and brings even more terrifying stories to you. And how about sharing this video with that friend who loves macabre tales? That way, you can dive into this dark world together. We thank each and every one of you for joining us. Your company is extremely important to our channel, and together we will create a community where shadows and whispers never fade away. Until next time, and remember, in the shadows, there's always a new story waiting to be told. Here are some of my recommendations for you to watch, if you have the courage.